I'm back.
There we go.
Hello. Look at all you beautiful faces. Say hello to my Twitch community, those of you that have videos. Or you can all speak at once. That's fine. Everybody say hi.
Hi.
These are my super nerdy friends where we all go fight each other in a field together. This year it was in the woods, but it's fine. Okay. The Hobbit, Chapter 1. Yay! I have begun reading this book. Not right now, but this is my first time ever reading these books. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I tried reading The Fellowship several times, and my brothers instilled in me that Tom Bombadil was the worst, and I could never get past Tom Bombadil. So,
Tom Bombadil's the best.
you and Breg can discuss how amazing Tom Bombadil is, because he loves him too.
Clearly, your brothers had the wrong opinion. So.
Yeah. This is evident.
He's a merry fellow.
Well, now with us all doing it together, I will get past Tom Bombadil and form my
You
own
have to
opinion.
read the Silmarillion, and then you're like, oh, now I think I know who Tom Bombadil is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have that. I do own that book. So I am ready. Okay.
It's like reading the Old Testament, though, sometimes.
That's exactly what I said. I was like, it's literally reading the Bible.
Is it because it's like just difficult to read? Like, why is it so hard?
No, it's and he begot he, and he begot he, and they all have the exact same names, and all the elves have these incredible lineages, and they're all the same. Turin had many sons, and Turin's son Turid, and
It's like reading the Bible genealogy in like the old King James version, and you're like, oh my word.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just very old English.
Yes.
the narrative parts are really cool. Like, there's some really, really cool, like, epic mythology. You really see, like, where Tolkien draws on, like, his earlier degree before he started going into linguistics with it, to me. Like, you really see a lot of the mythology in it. But yeah, there's some genealogies in there.
Oof. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll get there. One book at a time.
Yeah.
One book at a time.
We start easy with The Hobbit, and then we get to
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. I do own that. I actually have some other like I also have the, what is it, the Untold Tales, the Unfinished Tales.
Unfinished Tales.
Yeah, I have that one. And then when I was in Nashville and I went to McKay's, I got another of Tolkien's books that I had never heard of. It's like, they're more like poems, the stories. They're, hold on, I'll go grab it really quick. I'd never seen it before.
If it's the Lay of Sigurd, you get to finally realize why my character is named what it is at Weekend Warrior.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, there's a reason my character is family's Dragon Slayers. It's Tolkien's Lay of Sigurd.
Ah, yeah, because I got this one. It's The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd never seen this one before, and I had in-store credit from selling half of my Funko Pop collection, so I was like, I'm gonna use this for that. Anyways, so yeah, I got like $300 in store credit for Funko Pops. We're not gonna talk about it. All right, I got a bunch of nerdy books instead. Okay, chapter 1 of The Hobbit. Okay. I actually was really impressed by how close the book was, or at least to the movie. Or the movie was to the book, rather. I was
gonna say that's something that I really enjoy doing, is I love those movies, and so I love, reading the book and then saying, well, how did this differ from the movie, or what's similar, what's different, and just kind of really looking at them side by side.
In the book, Thorin arrives after everybody, doesn't he?
Yes,
Yeah,
he arrives last.
Yeah, but in the book he arrives.
No, in the book he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't. In the book he arrives in the
In the book he obviously gets he's flat on the mat underneath Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur or whatever.
Yeah, but I thought that was interesting because it was like he made such an entrance. They did that in the movie. They made such an entrance of like, here is Thorin Oakenshield arriving fashionably late, but then in the book it was like, no, he's just with 3 others. And then
He's
Hmm.
also super chatty in the book. In the movie,
Yes!
it's Richard Armitage smoldering the whole time. In the book, he's like, "Let me tell you about."
Yes.
Well, he's a little smolder in the book, I would say too. He's very much like, I'm a king in your peasant in your hole.
Mm,
But I think an interesting difference too is that in the movie, I remember Richard saying that he kind of commanded commanded everyone's presence by being quiet, and so that's kind of how he got the character across, was a very like quiet confidence. He didn't really say a lot.
Mhm.
Or in the book, Tolkien makes the distinction that he's a very important dwarf, so he's going to go on and talk and talk and talk your ear off because he thinks he's so important.
hmm
Very British.
Yes.
What being important is, right? That's the real difference, I think, between the book and the movie. The movie is very American,
Mm,
and the book is obviously British.
let's see.
And if you are just starting off, there it certainly diverges a lot more later on. The first chapter, though, it was an awesome book to movie kind of comparison. It was, and there's certainly parts in the movie that were much better, but it'll diverge a little later on.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I like the opening scene, the good morning,
Yes.
routine.
Yeah.
It's very mirrored in the movie.
They did get it really close because I was just kind of rereading it and just hearing Martin Freeman like, "Good morning."
Yes.
He
Yes.
got that voice very well.
Yes.
Mhm.
I highlighted that whole that part where it was like, what do you mean? Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that is a good morning whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, we are very much defining what a good morning is.
Yeah.
Very wizardy.
Yes.
Almost. You would expect the wizard that's been around for a while to be like, which one do you mean? Tell me.
I think it also can be kind of indicative of how the English use good morning. Like, it could be kind of a telling off as much as it can be a, hey, how you doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
As someone that's in England, you ain't wrong.
Oh yeah, and then with the whole good morning thing following up to that, and then the like Gandalf saying, "But I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I'm looking for someone to share an adventure that I am arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." I should think so. In these parts, we are plain quiet folk and have no use for adventure. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. It's like, oh boy. And it's just the fact that Bilbo like calls him out on it and is just like, well, good luck finding anybody to go on an adventure with you in Hobbiton.
I love that even later in the chapter, Gandalf kind of references that too. He's like, "Well, I couldn't very well find a hero like in these parts for your journey. Or find a burglar."
Yep. Yep. And
You
kind
guys have
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you have a favorite line from the beginning of the chapter? I kind of, or anything like that.
The beginning. It's not per se in the beginning, but I did like for me it's on page 7 and my book starts on page 3 for chapter 1. But the I beg your pardon little banter is just like I beg your pardon, I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have, twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable too. Very likely if you ever get over it. Just that I really like their banter. Their like little quips at each other, the little like just not taking much crap from each other.
My favorite line, it's actually one of my favorite lines from the entire book, from this chapter. It's then something Tukish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains and hear the pine trees and waterfalls and explore the caves
Yes.
and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. It's one of my favorite quotes from the entire book.
Yes.
That is my favorite quote from the entire book.
Yeah, I love that one.
And so my mother's maiden name is Turk, which is and so my entire family. So this book changed my life, right? And so my uncle always quotes that, saying that something very Turkish. Which is weird because we're not Turkish, but awoke in him, and yeah, that's absolutely, I think, the best quote in the book. But
That's awesome.
yeah,
The line
I
before
think
it
that's
too.
kind of like that's like I almost see this chapter divided in two, right? Because there's like the beginning, and then there's like thematically, there's the I'm a Hobbit, and it's very in Tolkien's voice, right? So in the beginning, you have this kind of like, if you only knew half the things that I've heard about Gandalf, kind of thing that Tolkien does, right?
Mhm.
He's talking, the author is talking directly to the reader, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite part in the beginning.
And I think an interesting thing too is, Tolkien wrote this kind of to be a fairy tale for adults. And so, a lot of adults, nowadays, like, really just kind of disregard fairy tales as, oh, those are children's stories. So that's kind of, I think, too, why he has Bilbo kind of have this, internal conflict of, oh, I want to go out and have adventure, but am I too old for this now? Like, this is a children's thing, So it's like, okay, you have the whole quote of, then something Tukish woke up inside him, and that whole line. And then it says, a few sentences later, he shuddered and very quickly again was plain Mr. Baggins of Bag End Underhill again. Meaning, he kind of has this internal conflict of, do I want to step out of my comfort zone and do something Tukish, so to say, and go on this adventure and do something that I would have loved to have done in my youth? Because, in the movies, Gandalf has the whole line of, I remember a little hobbit who was always running off in search of elves in the woods, and Bilbo's like, I'm not that person anymore. Like, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. And Gandalf's like, you can be if you want to, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to say, like, you're not ever too old for adventures and fairy tales and fantasy, which I think is a great lesson for especially people today.
Yeah.
You have to start using that more regularly. Let's go get Tookish.
Yeah.
Get into some Tookish mischief.
That's how we market what the Hearthguard does. It.
Yeah.
Um.
Around and looking at all you guys and being like, so, good morning.
What kind of good morning?
I just want to have magical smoke ring competitions.
I know. That sounds cool.
Like, that's something that they cut out of the movie that, yeah, I think is very cool. I like that Thorin, so in my mind, Thorin was always a little magical too, because, I mean, he's doing the same thing as Gandalf, just not as well, so.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, so, I mean, because Tolkien's magic isn't like a Sanderson magic, right? Where it's a hard system. It's like a very whimsical thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it was interesting when it said, I'll have to find it real quick, but he said, something like the smoke rings are going wherever Thorin tells them to or whatever. I remember I thought, what?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Which I think is very, as modern fantasy readers, we're like, oh, how's it happening? You have to explain the magic to me, and
right. And Tolkien's like, yeah, no thanks. It does it because it does.
It is always funny what Tolkien decides to go into lengthy detail and
right.
decides not to.
Although it's interesting hearing Sanderson talk about the magic system within the Lord of the Rings, where part of it is very prescribed, like the ring and what it's going to do to Frodo if he continues to hold it. So there's a very clear system of magic for that, and a very, Gandalf's magic is whatever's needed for the narrative kind of thing, and is not described at all. So there's a little bit of both of that, in Tolkien altogether, compared to Sanderson, who I'm listening to right now a little bit of, and yeah, he's got to explain it in 8 detail for you. Very different.
I think it's a difference between magic that is based on faith and magic that is based on like what I would categorize as like modern, like or maybe more like science-based magic, right? So Tolkien, was Tolkien's magic was like biblical magic, right? Like things happen because God wills it, right? And then in Sanderson, it's like, oh no, there's this system. It's like physics, but adjacent, and it has rules and things like that. So so Gandalf's an angel in Tolkien, and so like
spoilers. Sorry.
yeah, spoilers.
Ah.
Also, too, like, because you're getting the perspective of this through a hobbit, who is the hobbits next to humans are pretty much the least magical of all the races in Middle Earth. So it's like you have humans who are like basically no magic to them, and then you have hobbits who have very, very ordinary low level magic, and then it's probably going to go up to dwarves and then elves. And so it's like looking at even like what is considered probably very ordinary dwarfish magic to like this hobbit who is watching this happen. It's something extraordinary and not able to be explained because it's outside of the norm.
Yeah.
No,
And
it does. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Talking a lot.
well, I was going to say too, kind of one of the conceits of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings that is like Tolkien is kind of the ideas that he's like translating a thing he found kind of from this whole other language thing. So like as far as explaining a magic system goes, if it's not written in there, he has nothing to explain. So if it's something that would be every day for those people, you don't write down how the car goes when you talk about a car going somewhere because we all know how a car goes. So if they see how the magic works and it happens the same way every day, they don't write it in their epic tales because it's not an epic thing to them. And so when it gets translated, it doesn't need to be explained. It's just is.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Without giving away things, is that something that is throughout all the books? Like that is a trend throughout all the books kind of thing? Like the not explaining everything in grave detail when it comes to that?
It depends.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
I
like
think he explains a lot of history.
yeah,
A lot of
okay.
history,
Yeah.
but not a lot. The magic is definitely not explained. Like I don't think I can recall, a lot of. Well, we were just referencing Tom Bombadil. That's actually one of the great mysteries of the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien lore in general is like, who is Tom Bombadil? And so there's, everyone has a different theory on it, and there's some like really, analytical theories, but I think he left it pretty vague for a reason.
I think out of all of them, you probably get the most explanation in the Silmarillion when you get the very first age of Middle Earth explained. Like that is as scientific as it gets. You get kind of an explanation of like the days and the seasons and stuff like that, and that's probably the most kind of laid out you get for kind of the science and the lay work of Middle Earth is in the beginning of the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's also very biblical. It's like, it's you're like, okay.
They've published a lot of his notes and stuff, and it's like if you look at like all the appendices in his notes, he has the science written out. Like he has a calendar written out of like how the Middle Earth calendar works, but it's like of course none of that's included in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff.
Oh, that's crazy. So so he had written up like his own almost like reference guides for his own writing of like.
My favorite thing was like the latest batch of notes. I'm trying to remember what the name of the book was. It's one of the latest ones they've published, and he drew out an entire calendar of like how the actual calendar in Middle Earth works. But then it's like he uses like August and days and stuff like that, and his excuse is, as Kjartan said, is he is translating it, so he translates everything to the Gregorian calendar for the people he's translating for.
Oh, way cool.
Yeah.
What a clever workaround.
Yeah, I mean, you see that in the first chapter of The Hobbit, too, when he's talking about hobbits, and he's talking about them still existing in modern-day England, Just we never see them because they have magic that they can hide from us.
Oh.
Like, so that's something that yeah, a lot of people don't catch. Like they just, like, what is a hobbit? And he just blah, 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 talks about they're not very magical except for their ability to hide. Which is magical, but not defined magically. So, yeah.
Oh, very
I also
interesting.
like that when he's describing hobbits, he says that they have their hairy feet, right? That is neatly combed hairy feet, of course, right? Which is, I think, very different from how the movies portrayed it as just this kind of like feet, these like woolly things, and like neatly combed. And I'm picturing, like a hobbit, whatever. Hobbits having little combing and teaching their children how to comb their toes. I think
Like the Vikings with their beard combs, but the hobbits are carrying around their little feet combs.
They all carry around foot combs, and like, is it taboo to share your foot comb? Or is it like
or now,
like, is this something you get as a gift at a certain age when your foot hair starts coming in?
Hobbit puberty, you get your foot comb.
Yes. Or it's like, we have beard oil now. It's like, what is it like? Here's your foot hair oil.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I did like speaking of that, the neatly brushed woolly toes. I did like the little like parentheses notes throughout this chapter that give like interesting little insights. Where was the one that I kind of liked? Where'd it go? Like the best rooms were all on the left side, parentheses, going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, which kind of painted that 2 words saying going in gave even more of like an illustration of where you were oriented in the house, which was just like, oh, that's a neat little, like interesting little tidbit. And then to further elaborate on like the fact that they love food, like after he's mentioning that they have cellars and pantries, after he says pantries, he says lots of these, and wardrobes. He had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Instead of just listing off these rooms, it's like, no, like they liked their clothes and they liked their food. Like, know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Speaking of the description of the windows on the left side, so I have the new illustrated version that came out that has Tolkien's illustrations.
Oh,
and
wow.
This is the first time I saw this one, that Tolkien's illustration of the Hobbit hole, it runs parallel along the hill instead of going into the hill, kind of like that's in the movies and what I've always imagined. So it's like, they're almost more like mounds that you can see kind of the rounded, like, construction of the Hobbit holes running lengthwise along the hill, which I think is really cool.
That is neat. And that just furthers that vision of the left-hand side going in. Is that it's not almost, I mean, we saw in both like the Fellowship and in the Hobbit, obviously, like in the movies, that there were windows, obviously, but that does, what your image shows is like a completely different look than what the movie portrays.
They're very much more, they're definitely like, they're barrows in the books. Is definitely what Tolkien is basing them off of, is barrows. And I didn't never quite envisioned it until I got this copy with his drawings in it, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Let's see.
What do you guys think of the invention of the game of golf?
Wait, where's that? Where did I miss that?
What?
Wait,
it's like his grandfather, right?
Yeah, the Great Took.
Yeah.
The one that could ride the horse.
Yeah.
It was so large he could ride a horse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he knocked the goblin's
King's head off the river.
Oh.
And it rolled into a hill, rolled into a hole, and thus the game of golf was born.
Which is hilarious that golf canon exists in Middle Earth.
So funny thing about that, I completely forgot that line was in the book, and I've been recently rewatching the movies, and I was like, why did they put that? Like, what is the point of that? I completely forgot that was in the book, and I was like, oh, okay, that is in the book. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
I think that also goes back to what Ashley was saying about the little asides, the parentheses, and all that. Because I remember Tolkien, he kind of tested this book out on his kids, so there were a lot of playful asides, like the comment about golf that he threw in there to entertain his kids as well, and it just kind of naturally took hold in the published book because of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the difference in tone in this and Lord of the Rings are quite different, and like the gravitas and the playfulness.
It starts off playful in Lord of the Rings, and then the Nazgul show up, and it just kind of like completely takes a different tone.
I think that's just because of the setting is like you get the provincial, like British in the countryside, and it's like, so your setting is home and it's food and it's all these quaint things, and then it's like, and then the action gets, starts, and then the narrative begins. But it's like both of them, they both start in that very British provincial, like countryside setting, and like that's the framework you get for like, these are hobbits, this is what this is who this protagonist is.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think it's also the whimsical, like writing a story for my children versus like writing down my grand epic that is also me getting over my PTSD of losing my 3 best friends in World War One. Those are very different writing tones.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So that's what Merry, Pippin, and Sam. So like in World War One, Tolkien fought. And he, like, in World War One, they would group an entire town, and they'd be like, "Okay, you guys are all the 101st, right?" And so his 3 best friends all went with him, and they all died. And so that's why it's very important to Tolkien that Merry, Pippin, and Sam all come home at the end of Lord of the Rings. Spoilers if you haven't read it or seen the movies.
What nerd hasn't watched the movie?
Yeah, and he gives the like, this is what, then they all became great, in their own town, and that's
that is very interesting. No, that is very interesting. I didn't know that.
Too, it's like he was sending chunks of Lord of the Rings to Christopher when Christopher was in the RAF. So it's like it's being written by a war vet for someone who's fighting in war versus this is written for Christopher when Christopher is still a kid for bedtime stories. And it's like that is definitely the difference in tone there.
Oh wow.
Yep.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Although when we talk a little bit about the whimsy, I love the extended version of the Lord of the Rings, the describing hobbits. The beginning of that movie, that is the best extended edition scene in the whole thing, is that whole thing about describing hobbits and everything. I love that scene.
Yeah.
The guy with the
Yep.
The earwax, yeah.
Yeah,
it was. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, on that train of thought of being whimsical, I think that is something that I kind of miss in the movies because they tried to make it so much like Lord of the Rings. I know they were gonna have Del Toro originally do the Hobbit films, and there was just kind of a whole big falling out there. But I still would have obviously loved to have seen what Del Toro would have done with it. I think it would have been completely different from Peter Jackson.
I'm pretty glad that he didn't.
I think it would have been interesting. I don't know if it would have been better.
I don't. Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Hollywood anymore for adapting things, and I think that Jackson's adapting was kind of like a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So, what about all the food descriptions?
Oh, I love it.
I was gonna bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, the food. So this got me, man. I had forgotten like how much he describes the food, and I was like, oh man, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So when Unexpected Party came out in theaters, me and some of my childhood friends did a Hobbit party where we made every single thing that is mentioned in Chapter 1 of The Hobbit.
Oh my gosh!
I have pictures somewhere. It is a outrageous amount of food. Like, it is so much food. It's unreal.
Yeah. To that point, I literally highlighted the line where Bilbo's like, he had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it, however painful he might have to go without. And I was like, how much like, dude, you know, and but to that point, it's like, how much food do you just have on hand, like, you know, that you think you're gonna run out, and yet it just keeps coming?
Rooms of larders, you know.
Well, right, yeah.
Honestly, too, like I love the food descriptions, but something I've really noticed, I don't know if you guys have read the Redwall books.
I was just going to talk about the Red Bull books.
Yeah, it's like he's famous for all his food descriptions and stuff, but it's like they both Brian Jacques and Tolkien kind of went through a lot of the same stuff. And so it's interesting kind of looking at it as like somebody who went through World War One and then World War Two and went through rationing and all that it's like people who go through really hard times of food rationing and stuff, they idealize food so much in the fantasy and the whimsy in the books, and it's like you really get that in The Hobbit. It's just this like, oh, food, all this glorious juicy food, because it's like the writer has gone through the horror of war and rationing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's you really get that from the Redwall books too. Yeah, it's this huge
I was gonna say that
emphasis.
come up in Lord of the Rings a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's one of the reasons why Lembas is so important to Tolkien too, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, of course, the elves would have a magically better MRE. Right? Like,
You only need one bite.
yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. It's a
It's light. It
All right.
doesn't go stale. It's filling. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Married
I'm gonna have to
like 3 of them, and they were like,
MREs to Weekend Warrior for you guys.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, so you guys can all have them.
Oh, excellent. We'll make our.
Been there.
I wish I could be there to give them to you guys for trauma bonding. 'Cause that would be appropriate.
Oh my gosh.
I've done my share of MREs, thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't give you one. We would laugh. Everyone else.
You just kick back, prop your feet up, and just be like, all right, have fun.
I was still shocked when they started putting candy in the MREs, because I went joined boot camp in like '89, so it was an older generation of MREs. Still had the bottles of Tabasco, but no candy.
Yeah. All right. What about the song?
Wait.
The extended edition.
Which one? Are we talking about the putting away all the dishes ones?
No, the real song.
The
Okay.
Misty Mountain song.
There's 2
Yeah.
songs.
Although I do have to say that I grew up, having watched the animated Hobbit.
Yep.
And so the chip the grasses, black the plates, that's what Bilbo Baggins hates. I mean, very strong memories of that.
Same.
It's hard to watch now, unfortunately, because I tried watching it and it was a little bit tough. But yeah, those songs had such a big part of the animated one that came out, back when I was a youth.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video where a guy took Howard Shore's soundtrack and put it onto the original animated, and it improves the quality substantially.
Huh.
And it just shows like how powerful music is in visual art, and it was like, wow, okay, yeah, because I agree, like it's hard to watch. You're like, all right, man.
I think that one's on HBO right now. The one you guys are talking about. I grew up having if it's the one I'm thinking of, we had that one on VHS, and we had Return of the King, both of those animated ones. And I remember and that was also, I know we're not talking about Return of the King right now, but a little bit of momentary derailment is that in Return of the King, the Nazgul ride horses and not the dragons. And it's like that, those in the animated one is and then you watch you watch the trilogy as we know it, and it's like, you know, you see these like dragony things, and you're like, wait a minute, they were on horses. You know, anyways, that was a little slight derailment. Okay, back to Misty Mountain Song. Sorry. All right.
Yeah, I was just wanted to hear what you guys thought of the extended lines, you know, because Tolkien does a lot of music, right? So yes, there's the that's what Bilbo Baggins. I feel like the movie kept very tight to that song because it's so short, but they cut a lot out of the Misty Mountain song.
The part I had caught, because I just finished rereading the Silmarillion, and it talks about on silver necklaces they strung, the flowering stars on crowns they hung, the dragon fire and twisted wire they meshed the light of moon and sun. I was like, I just finished rereading that bit in the Silmarillion. And
Jorn's like, spoilers!
Spoilers for everyone.
Spoilers!
Yeah. But that was fresh in my mind, and I was like, oh, I forgot that bit was in the song.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Without giving anything else away.
Later.
Yeah.
Like if you have the same, you know, kind of general theories of what the Arkenstone is, and things like that.
Oh, so it ties into that. Interesting. Okay.
Maybe it's not really defined. Tolkien doesn't define.
I think we have the same theory though, because I always thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But that could also be a very modern thing of us, you know, to be like, oh yeah, it's got to be this, you know, and it could just be like Tolkien, be like, no, there are magical things in the world beyond, you know. I love.
So speaking of the songs too, does anyone else have the Andy Serkis audiobook of The Hobbit?
No.
I have the Silmarillion and the trilogy. I think my next Audible, I'll get the Hobbit one.
Yeah, so he does this, and he does all the singing for it. And it's funny because I love listening to him narrate the stories. The songs always slow down the narrative, especially like in the trilogy where he starts singing the Ent songs, and you're like, I could read this like 30 times faster than he's narrating it. But he does a great job with the songs in the book, in the audio book for the Hobbit. I really enjoy hearing him do it, and it's doing the full version.
Does he do the Gollum voices like Gollum in the movie?
He does.
Awesome.
He does a great job. It's I've had some audiobooks I've listened to that it's distracting when they try and have the one person do lots of different things. He does an amazing job. He's a pleasure to listen to for these stories.
I really enjoy that he kind of takes the songs into his own, because it's like I was almost expecting him to sing the same tunes that they do in the movies, and it's like he kind of does his own tune for the songs, which I really liked actually.
Yeah, the song in the movie I love. And I actually it meant a lot to me when it, like, hearing it put to music, and I was just like, oh man, that gave me so much hope for that movie trilogy. I felt a little dashed. That hope was dashed, but I love that song. So.
That is a good point, because like when I was reading, like, because you know, like Joran, Tag, you guys read this before the movies came out, so like when I read through the songs, both of them, is like I kind of had the musical rhythm going in my head of like how the songs go, because we've just been so ingrained with it. But that is interesting to your point of probably when you read this originally, it was, you know, you had air quote no sense of what the music would be for it. You just kind of read it maybe as like a poem type of thing, because it does kind of have that.
But it's because of the original audiobooks. So
okay.
I read these very young, but I also grew up listening to the oh my gosh, what is that? I'm trying to think of his name now. He does the trilogy and he does the Hobbit. Let's see here. His are really good too. They're not Andy Serkis, but they're I'm trying to remember his name. He's very British.
That's a very good description. He's very British.
Very British.
But Yoren, would you say that when you read these, like your first time reading them before the movies came out, that you just kind of read them more in like a poetic sense, or did you have some like you just kind of read them?
I was pretty young.
Okay.
Pretty young, so it was very it was tough for me to like get through a lot of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of dragged the narrative for me. So have I told you how The Hobbit changed my life?
No, I don't think you mentioned this.
I usually tell this story to people when we're talking about books, and so I didn't want to rehash the story.
You're good.
So when I was when I was growing up in like third grade, and into that, I was really behind in reading. All right, and my teachers were essentially like, Jared has a reading disability, a learning disability. Like he's really behind. We need to do all these things. We should probably put him on medication. Blah blah blah. And my mom didn't know what to do. All right, and so I grew up in a very like fundamentalist Christian home, right? And my uncle is a college professor, and he came to my mom in my summer between third and fourth grade, and he said, Jared is not reading. Jared's very smart. He's not disabled or anything like that. He just doesn't like any of the things that the teachers are making him read. And so he said, have him read this, and he gave me a copy of The Hobbit. And it was hard for my mom because she didn't know anything about Tolkien. She didn't know anything about the history. All she saw was like the old school cover with like Gollum and Bilbo on it, and it reeks of fantasy, which at the time, there was like, in my household, like He-Man was seen as bad, right? Like, because it was like the corrupting of things, right? Like there was all this like, oh, these things are bad. But my mom was desperate, so she gave in. And I devoured The Hobbit, and I devoured The Lord of the Rings in a summer. So the summer between third grade and fourth grade, I went from barely reading at like a, first grade level to reading at a 12th grade level. And I was past all my peers by the end of the summer. I came back, and I never stopped reading. So
way cool.
I've been reading books ever since.
Just hand this man some military history tactic books. He'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, that probably would have worked too. Something interesting. And I think that's one of the failings of our educational system, is that there's a lot of people who are very smart, are uninterested in what we're trying to shove down their throats in our Prussian designed, factory worker oriented educational system.
I definitely I don't have like a pivotal book like you do for reading, but I definitely had a similar turning point in about third grade where I don't think there was any kind of like deep conversations that were like, oh, Deborah's behind or anything like that, or she's not reading or something. But I remember having a like noticeable shift in my enjoyment of reading in third grade, where I went from loathing reading to I then was reading in the car. TMI, I was reading in the bathroom. I was reading in my bed, next to my bed, laying on the floor, on the couch, on the porch. Like I was reading with a flashlight in the car on long trips.
Yeah.
Like I would
What were you reading?
Oh, I mean, the Inheritance book series I read the first time, I think, in third grade. I have reread that book series countless times since. My Secret Santa got me the Murtaugh book for Secret Santa at work this year. I've
never finished that series.
I love it. I've reread them.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
I'm trying to get my nephew into it because he's an avid reader. And I told him, I was like, if you read this book series, I will read it in parallel with you. Like I will read it with you. Any excuse to reread that book series, I'll do it, kind of thing. And he's 10. So it's like he would be and he's brilliant. So it's like getting him that book would be great. But yeah, I just remember having like a visible shift in like I went from hating books to loving books, and then I got to a point where I was reading like multiple Magic Tree House, multiple American Girl doll books in like a day, like, which I know is like
I love Magic Tree House. Oh my
Magic
gosh.
Tree House is amazing.
Yes.
But like
memories.
Magic Tree House was my like Bjorn story of kickstarting the reading. That Magic Tree House was mine.
I love Magic Tree House, so good. And like I was a big American Girl doll kid, so like I devoured those books and everything. I mean, yeah, those are easy reads, but like I was just like reading them and everything. But oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
I love that. So for me, I think, I know we're kind of getting off on a tangent, but I just have to share this. I think my, pivotal book that I was like, okay, I love fantasy stuff now was actually The Never-Ending Story. Did anybody read that?
No, I only saw the movie.
Yeah,
movie was terrible. Book, I think I've read it like 15 times. Like, it's so good. I just love it. And I think I read that in like elementary school, and that's when I was like, okay, I love fantasy stuff. This is great. And then shortly after that, I got into Tolkien, and I was like, okay, this is who I am now.
I am a nerd. Confirmed. Yes.
I was like, well, this is going to be my personality for the rest of my life.
Literally enter that soundbite.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was reading this, like, yes, I'm annotating it because like it makes me slow down. I think it'll be more helpful in Lord of the Rings and less with this, but like it makes me slow down and like actually read it, because I do have a tendency when I'm trying to read a book with a deadline, which I know we're doing something very manageable, but it is still a deadline and life and everything. But I will start skimming. Like,
I do that.
I will speed skim.
One chapter a week, man.
Shush. That's a lot. No. But no. I wanted to do like a chapter a day when I originally was going to do this. But then I was like, no, I know myself and I'm going to have a bad day and I'm not going to want to read that. And anyways, but the annotation makes me slow down. And when I got like on Facebook Marketplace, I got this like bundle of Tolkien stuff. So I have like the leather bound little ones and the Silmarillion and all sorts of other things. But this actually came with it. I know you guys in Discord can't see, but it's called Tolkien, a Dictionary by David Day. And it's just like this, it's like a encyclopedia of like, it's all in alphabetical order and you can look up like places and people and all sorts of stuff. And it was very interesting to go look up things as I went and see like these kind of like extended descriptions of various things with like, I'm sure it's coming from, I don't know. It's just very interesting to get even more information about either the people or like the places or anything. It was very interesting. Similarly tagged to like your illustrated copy where you're like, oh, this is what they want the Hobbit holes to look like, kind of thing. It was just like, oh, more information. I like this.
It'll definitely help you when you start reading the trilogy, because it's like you're gonna go in, you're gonna be, oh, okay, like yes. I know what this is, I know what these connections are. Like,
yes,
that'll definitely help you a lot reading through the other three.
Yes. And then let's see, where was it? Where was it? I liked where is it? I'm gonna find this, I promise. I know we're gonna this is skipping to the end of the chapter, but speaking of the songs and stuff, is that in like at the very, 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 very end of the chapter, there's one, they redo a verse from Misty Mountain, and the we must away ere break of day. I found it very interesting that the next line of like text, is Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he woke up. And then I just think about in the movie where the next scene is him booking it after everybody, and everything. And I found that little connection very interesting, where it's just like, oh, there's this literal line in their song about we're going to be leaving at the break of day. And then Tolkien makes a point to note that Bilbo oversleeps. or at least oversleeps in comparison to the song. And it was just like this, I don't know if it was intentional, but I found it very interesting. It was probably, I'm sure it's intentional, but like, I just found it interesting. My little like first time reader, ness to it. I was like, well, that's interesting.
And there is a difference in the book and the movie, which we'll get to in the next chapter, which I also find interesting.
We'll
But we'll get
discuss
there
that
first.
next week. We have
Yes,
that
we
next
will.
week.
I'll make a mental note.
I think it's the Ed Sheeran song they did.
Yeah.
I can't remember which of the
Fire.
movies Ed Sheeran did, but they used that line in the song,
Yeah.
or Break of Day. He winds up using
Or
that.
was it Neil Finn, The Lonely Mountain?
Maybe it is. It's one of the
Yeah.
songs they did for the Hobbit trilogy
Yeah, it was the
movies
Neil Finn one.
that they use that line.
Yeah.
They do pull it from that verse, which is cool.
Yeah. See.
Also, I wanted to bring this up, and we're way past earlier in the chapter.
You're
had
good.
never quite caught that the pipe that Bilbo is smoking is like past his knees. Like it's basically the entire size of him. It's like a trumpet. I knew it was really big, but it'd been a while since I'd read this, and went back and I'm like, he's smoking a pipe that like goes down to his feet when he's talking to Gandalf.
It seems like that would be a pain in the butt to smoke.
That's always like,
how do you even light that?
Definitely
Like,
not a
you would have to
travel
really-
pipe.
Yeah, you'd have to really pull to draw that out. Like.
I also just picture one of those like incense, like sticks to light it, where it's just got the little flame at the end, and he's like reaching down to light it, like with a Hobbit arm, like, Oh, that's a good point. I don't even know if I caught that. I might have already been.
I'm trying to go back and find the exact description because it cracked me up.
That is interesting.
He is a hobbit though, so it's probably only like 2 feet long.
Still a big pipe.
Hey, it's all relative. It's all relative.
I'm trying to figure out where it was. It was like very, very beginning of.
It's pretty big, Calder. You gotta take it into perspective, man.
Yeah. Okay. Like a normal.
It's actually it's a very average sized pipe.
It's average size.
Average for who?
Oh man, that's a big pipe. What are you talking?
I like how we're
I'm not
all
gonna look.
like scanning for this. Is it like
Trying to find it now.
It's like right in the beginning.
Yeah, it is.
I can help if you need.
Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes. So this is like an almost 3-foot long pipe that he's standing on his front porch and smoking.
It's like a Ricola trumpet.
I just picture, I know this isn't the same like proportions, but it's like Gaz with the didgeridoo walking around camp. Oh man.
Yeah, I like how like relaxed his life is too. I'm just like, when can I get this life where like I
Right?
could just have breakfast and then just go outside and sit on my porch and smoke? But I guess he's old too, so he's probably
He's 50.
yeah.
Not for a hobbit. He's like
Yeah.
He's
Yeah, it's
probably
like
he's probably like
years.
30s for a hobbit.
Yeah.
But
Well, I know
dude,
he
If
was
anyone
obviously,
read Genesis like that, you're like, oh, this guy fathered his first child when he was 107. You're like, okay, right on, bro.
right. But do
But
we?
he was well-to-do, right? So he does.
Right.
And so
But,
I wish I was independently wealthy.
right. And that
Yeah.
was something I was gonna bring that up too, Mark. Is that it's like it was interesting how, like in the book, Tolkien goes into the specifics of like Bilbo's ancestry, like his mother and his father, about how like his father built Bag End and in one of the parentheses, and partly with her money, and stuff. And so it's like, to your point, Yorin, of like, when can we have this life kind of thing? Do we like, and you Tolkien experts in the chat, do we think that that's because he is like a wealthier hobbit, or is that just like a general norm of hobbits that they kind of have like, go for it, Tag, go for it?
So the Tooks are like hobbit aristocracy. They are sort of royalty amongst the hobbits. They're very wealthy. The Great Took is kind of considered to be what would be like a Dane for the hobbits, like a leader. And that's why when you get to Lord of the Rings, technically Pippin is related to Frodo, because Pippin is a Took and Frodo is related to Bilbo, and Bilbo's mother was a Took. And Pippin, one of the things in the book is why Pippin kind of seems a bit younger and more like head in the clouds, is Pippin is related to the Great Took, and Pippin is basically a Thane. He's basically a Hobbit prince. So that is a big important part of Lord of the Rings, because you get Frodo and Pippin, who are the British upper class, and then you get Sam, which is very much the World War I peasants, like trenchmen serving with them, and that's like a really big part of kind of Tolkien serving in World War I, and you get the experience of like the British upper class with like the British lower class.
Oh, interesting.
He's a trust fund kid.
So again, this is derailing a little bit. Again, we haven't read, well, I have not read Lord of the Rings, but in the movies, is this why Sam like always says Mr. Frodo? Is that more of like a respect thing for his position in society?
He's his gardener, so Frodo is his better, for for better words.
Okay.
He is socially above him, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frodo's also considerably older, isn't he?
Yeah, Frodo's older than Sam by a lot. Frodo, by the time of the beginning of the first Lord of the Rings movie, he's about 52.
No, I think he's 33 on the party, and then there's like a large
A 20-year gap, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, look here, man. I'm about to Google this.
sorry.
No, you're right. You're right that when he goes on the actual endeavor of the taking the ring to Mordor, he's in his 50s, right? Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because the 30s is like tweens for the hobbits, is what Tolkien says. So like some of the other hobbits are what we would consider to be like in your early 20s. So they're much younger, and then Frodo is very much not. He's more like in your 30s. To 40s probably. It's however you hobbit lifespan.
Right. I believe like 33 is like their coming of age. It's like
yeah,
year-old.
Huh.
Tag, how long do hobbits live for?
I mean, it's like they note that Bilbo being 111 is unusual, that he's in such good shape. So I think they regularly live into their early hundreds, but it's like, it's like being really old for us. So I think the remarkability of Bilbo being like so spry for 111, but I don't think it's remarkable in and of itself that he makes it to 111.
Okay.
All right, I think the Great Took Bulwer, he lasted a while, if I remember correctly, like almost to 150. I might be.
Yeah, I think they live, I would say probably like 50 years longer than humans. That's what it always seemed like to me.
Yep, I think that's a good number to pin down.
Just to add to, Bulwer is definitely like my favorite nickname in the entire Lord of the Rings. Like the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, those two books. The Bulwer is definitely my favorite nickname.
What is now?
Bullroar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Is that where is that? Where are we getting to that?
That's the Great Took's, like that's his full name is Bulroar Took.
That's right there, dude.
Yeah. That's like where he invented golf. Same guy.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Everybody say hello to Queen Tove. She's in chat. She says, look at all these beautiful or gorgeous Hearthguards. She says hi.
Hi, Queen Tove.
Hello. Whatever it is, I didn't do.
No, she's just coming by to say hi.
If anyone's gonna yell at you, it's me, so don't worry.
I
Just the,
feel that because you're my half sister.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
There's so many people are related in the Hearthguard now.
I mean,
Like,
are you
what
surprised?
happened to me for 1 year, and it's like
No. You stay home for 1 year. You stayed in Murnock for 1 year.
I don't know. I'm thinking about saying that I went on a Viking for this. Yeah.
just the setup for the rest of the story, and I don't think we've discussed it yet, with all the related names. So like Balin and gosh, what Dwalin, like they're related, and usually Tolkien lets us know that by like how close the names are. So like Biffle, Buffer, Buffer, they're most
Yeah, I
likely
think at
related.
one point, like the fandom kind of affectionately called like Ori, Dori, and Nori like the Ree brothers because they all have Ree and they're like the R-I at the end.
Right, and that usually, I mean, that extends throughout all the books, like Eowyn, Theoden,
Yes.
Aemir, like that's just something he does. So I don't know.
I
just
love
for the-
too that they all have like a meaning. So it's like the family line will have the meaning with it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's gonna sound so dorky, but they do not write books like this anymore. Like with all the in-depth thought and stuff to books. And I think wrapping back way back to like the beginning of our conversation to your point, Yoren, about the magic and the air quote lack of explanation. That was always something that my mom instilled in all of us, was that she always would love books over movies. Like even though she enjoyed movies, she was like, movies tell you too much. Like they spell everything out. Whereas like books, there's something about the ability for you to fill in the gaps with your own imagination, but taking what the author gives you and then kind of running with it. Like, and just filling in the little holes like on your own. And I've like the descriptions that Tolkien gives both to characters and to like the scenery is extremely clear, but then you can still fill in little like things where you're like, I'm wondering if this would be here or something like that based on those descriptions. And I love that there's like full paragraphs of just descriptions of either the people, like I was saying about Bilbo's like parents and stuff like that. It's like these are some big paragraphs just describing like it's just wow, you know, like it's I don't know, it's just cool, like the description and the descriptors, and I just love it.
What I always deeply appreciated about Tolkien was that what he gives detail to is the environment rather than telling you kind of what's going on with the characters. Again, it's like the show don't tell. And that's literally what made me want to be a writer when I was little, was I started reading Tolkien, and it was like I started off with him and it's like his descriptors of environments, and it's like that to me was always what storytelling was, and it still is to me, very much so. That's exactly like that. It's like, what does he give the descriptions to? It's the environment and it's the world he's created. It's not necessarily telling you, you know, what the characters are doing or thinking or whatever. It's like that's up to you to kind of conjure that up.
So I think kind of
and it's a whole meme, right?
What?
It's a whole meme, right, about Tolkien's writing and how descriptive he gets when they're like, you've written 3 pages about a tree, will you stop? And it's like the whole old cap, I don't think I will.
Yes. So I think kind of going with that, something interesting. So I have a Tumblr page and everything, and I have to admit they have some pretty good thoughts on there about stuff. And one I came across recently was that, you know, people missing about Lord of the Rings is that someone mentioned that, you know, it's almost kind of post-apocalyptic. Like you have all these ruins and things that Tolkien describes, and, you know, you're in the third age of Middle Earth, and, you know, you really realize that, oh, wow, you know, it kind of is post-apocalyptic in a way, because, you know, the Fellowship and the Hobbit, and, you know, and they all have these places that have been around for just thousands of years, and they're going through these ruins and stuff. And I thought that was a very interesting way to look at it, because, you know, Tolkien went through war, so I think he kind of wanted to show like a war-torn landscape that had been through a lot.
I think that's also Europe.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
we
yeah.
that in the United States, that Europe, there are ruins in Europe that you can just find. Like if you you ever go on to there's like things like abandoned Scotland, and look it up. Just it's like a Instagram page, and people just go around Scotland and find like these abandoned places that are like, you're like, man, I want to go there and just like LARP it out, man.
Oh yeah.
It's like literally just ruins, and I'm like, this could be like an awesome thing.
Because he really wrote, these books also to be kind of. I don't remember if it was something from Tolkien or someone else, but basically saying that these books were written as kind of like an epic for Europe. Because Egypt, you have all these ancient mythology, but at that time Tolkien was writing them, it was still, I wouldn't say like fairly new, but they didn't have all these epics and stories that had been passed down, and Tolkien wanted to create something.
And I think that's part of the unfinished tales, right? Where I think the original plan was that the Western lands was supposed to be England, and he would talk a little bit about it. So that was, I think, his original plan was, when they sail off to the west, that was actually England that they would sail off to. And I think in the story talk, you see these things of history that remained from there. So
Right.
Yeah.
Which isn't canon, granted.
I think all that like supplementally type material, like I think it just continues to expand on everything. Like I think it's awesome. Like regardless if he wrote it or if it's just interesting to see what 4 books have inspired and have brought to light.
Yeah, I mean, like spawned a genre essentially.
Yeah.
Right. That we all love. I mean, obviously didn't create the genre because there was books on it before, but really made it something that was maybe like real or viable, right?
That is very interesting.
Well, like maybe popularized, like brought it to the forefront.
Made it more mainstream or.
Yeah.
I mean, when this book was published, it became like a phenomenon of people reading it. Whereas before, like you had like Robert E. Howard and stuff like that, and they were really like writing fantasy in like these like novelettes, right? Like that's what, if you ever read Conan, it's they're short stories essentially, and not like full gigantic thing. And Robert E. Howard had a pseudo fleshed out world, but it was not like Tolkien, right? So.
When you guys are talking about the fact that he actually has like a written calendar somewhere that he was using to reference things, like he had a fully fleshed out.
Invented he invented those languages, right? Like they're full blown languages.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and that's another thing, like to talk about what these have inspired. It's like people have learned. I know Aluna has, like, in her podcast, the Weekend Warrior podcast, she talks about how like at a young age she was like writing letters in Elvish, which does not surprise any of us at all. But like it's. And I remember like there was a girl I went to summer camp with who, like, when we put our nameplates on our like beds in the camp or whatever, like she wrote her name like she wrote it in English too, but like she wrote it in Elvish because she's like, oh yeah, I'm learning Elvish. And I'm like, what? Like casual, kind of thing, and stuff like that. Like I think it's just really cool. And everything.
Yeah, for me too, seeing like the dwarvish runes and stuff like that really fascinated me. So I've learned like all those runes and everything because they kind of come from the Anglo-Saxon runes. But that's really what got me into, all the Viking stuff, honestly.
Woo!
Yes.
Well,
so, I just all the dwarven stuff is just really cool because of how, in the book and movies, it really ties into kind of the Nordic culture.
Well, does anybody have any? We're a little over an hour, which is good. Does anybody have any final thoughts on chapter 1?
I love the map. Got the shirt to go with it and everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have been getting so many targeted ads on everything about Hobbit merchandise. I got phone cases. That was a big one
It's
recently.
because you're Hobbit sized.
That's just factual. Don't call me out like that, Mork, okay? Gosh. Well, any last thoughts?
Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah, I was like, this will help keep me, the training group chat, everybody's keeping accountable about their working out. I was like, this will keep me accountable to reading these books. And it's fun. It's fun. Like
And
I
I
like
can slowly peer pressure everyone into reading the Silmarillion. Slowly,
I'm
through
down.
the weeks, I'll just like work everybody.
I'm down.
I don't think that if we kept this schedule and tried to read just the Lord of the Rings, I think
It'll be like
we can
2035.
we can be a bit more aggressive. This was a test to see, like, we can discuss maybe not for this coming week, but maybe in coming weeks we can discuss upping the speed. Because again, I wanted to do something, because I know myself, I wanted to do something that was
you want it manageable,
accomplishable, because I didn't want to be so zealous that then we set myself up for failure or and everything, because but anyways, okay, well, if there's no final thoughts, I'm gonna go wrap this up, but I will be back, friends, so if you want to stick around, I'll be back, but otherwise I'm gonna go wrap this up. Everybody wave bye or say bye. Yay, book club meeting number 1. Yay. Okay, I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back. Okay, friends. So that was meeting number 1 of the group. And I'm going to send it off for the YouTube video part of this. And you guys have been awesome. We're going to be reading chapter 2 and chapter 3, I believe, this coming week. Like I said, we'll see if we want to up the ante for coming weeks. Appreciate you guys hanging out and everything and everybody being in here. And I will wrap this up and then send you guys on off to somebody. So later this week, I will be doing my personal reading. And then we'll have another group meeting next Monday. So I appreciate all of you guys and bear with me here.